In many anthologies, British Romanticism is represented by five primary poets. You have William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who both work closely together. You have John Keats and Lord Byron. Both of them were very good friends. And you also have William Blake, who is a little before all the previous four that I have mentioned. Each of them has a very unique approach to Romanticism and towards the literature at this time. As a movement, Romanticism is very difficult to stereotype because Romanticism itself is very much concerned with the individual soul and the individual's role in creating the world around them. To understand the Romantics, you really must understand each poet because the Romantics are not a sect. The Romantics do not share very many common tenets and belief. In fact, I like the metaphor of trying to herd cats. They are very much individualists, and Romanticism celebrates the individual, whereas Neoclassicism celebrates society and celebrates restraint. And for these reasons, it is difficult to talk about the Romantic movement in very many stereotypes, but this is an introduction course, so I'm going to make these attempts as best as I can. One of the landmark works of Romanticism is by a famous British politician at the time. His name is Edmund Burke. Edmund Burke is most known today for his reflections on the French Revolution, in which he adapts a neoclassical position and attacks the excesses and the violence of the French Revolution. However, Edmund Burke also wrote a very famous work on aesthetics called On the Sublime. And On the Sublime is important to understand some of the aesthetic ideals that would be taken up and adapted by the Romantic poets. As mentioned before, for the neoclassical writers, beauty was about man's control of nature. The well-tended garden was the metaphor that I mentioned before, and beauty was seen as art or artificial. Beauty was something created by man and that reflects reason. In Burke's On the Sublime, he brings up a new aesthetic and one that is still with us today. Edmund Burke writes, the passion caused by the great and sublime in nature is astonishment. The astonishment is that state of the soul in which all its motions are suspended with some degree of horror. In this case, the mind is so entirely filled with its object that it cannot entertain any other. So Burke is concerned with the kind of beauty that we experience not when we are in a controlled setting, but the kind of wild, out of control, crazy beauty that completely fills our being. A great metaphor for this, and I will read the poem, is William Blake's The Tiger. Of course, as humans, tigers are extremely scary. A tiger can attack us, a tiger can kill us. The strength of a tiger is something beyond our imaginations. And obviously, were we to face the uncontrolled rage of a tiger, we would be petrified or terrified. Burke is interested in celebrating this feeling of astonishment or this feeling of terror. But of course, this feeling of terror needs to be controlled. So many times when I've read discussions on what Burke means by the sublime, it's the idea of viewing a caged tiger, the idea of viewing something that is wild, that's not a direct threat to our lives, and that feeling of astonishment that comes over us when we see something so strong, so powerful, so overwhelming. And William Blake's The Tiger tries to tap in to these feelings of astonishment. He writes, "Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?" So right from the very beginning, you see this nod to this idea of the sublime. The tiger is something that, how could a good God create such a powerful, astonishing creature? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? So again, Burke is questioning what kind of creator could possibly create such a terrifying creature as the tiger. And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain, in what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp, dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? So we see Blake is discussing this idea of the creator or God. Obviously, God has created many wonderful, many beautiful, many soft things, but he's also created evil things. It depends on your theology. I don't want to get into it. But when you read Blake, he loves to put two opposite ideas together in conjunction. This is how his Songs of Experience and Songs of Innocence work. And of course, we don't have time to go through and read all of the Songs of Experience and all of the Songs of Innocence. But you see, he makes a reference to the Lamb. Did he who made the lamb make thee? And there's a companion poem to the tiger called The Lamb, in which the purity and the innocence of the lamb is viewed from the perspective of a child. And in the Songs of Experience, we encounter the tiger. And here we see a celebration of these extremes, which is very common in Romantic poetry. On the one hand, you have the lamb, which is gentle and mild and represents Jesus and his flock. And on the other, you have the tiger, which is fierce and savage and represents violence, and in the description is almost satanic when its creation is being described. So we see this idea of the sublime, this astonishment at the vastness of nature to terrify and overwhelm us in Burke and Blake and in most of the other Romantic poets. There are many lines in Wordsworth where he discusses being overwhelmed by being in the natural world. For example, in Tintern Abbey, he visits an old dilapidated medieval Roman era church, I can't remember, and he's just astonished by the natural beauty. And again, this is natural beauty. This is not man-made beauty. This is beauty that is uncontrolled, beauty that is created by nature, not by the hand of man. And this is another important aspect of Romantic poetry, is that it begins to celebrate the wild, the crazy, the uncivilized. And we'll explore more of these aspects of Romantic poetry in later videos.